Hey guys, welcome to episode 63 of The Green Life. Today's episode is super educational, fun. I have an amazing guest here, Patty Lager. Patty is a doctor of naturopathy, physiologist and biochemist, detox specialist, anatomy and physiology professor. Actually, it's because of her AMP that I even met Patty, because she works with Dr. Robert Morse, teaching AMP for his courses and being involved in some of the conversations that they have with people who have questions about the health. And I love the way that she explains AMP. I don't know if you had this experience before, but when I studied AMP, I really found it so boring because the teachers were so gray about it. They were not passionate, they were not connecting the dots, and it was really a shame because the body is so beautiful, and I always love to know how it all works. And I love how Dr. Morse and Patty work together and share that and really go deeper and question, and the theories that they have makes so much sense to me that I really love it. And not only they see results, and that's really what it's all about. So before we get into the episode, I just want to give a big shout out to Nama Well for the J2 juicer. You know I love my juicer. If you're on the market for a new machine and you really want to upgrade, I suggest the J2, and you can get 10% off with my discount in the show notes. Also, we have a beautiful farm here in northern Portugal that is open for the summer, for retreats, for visits, for events. Check out my page in the link below, and so that you can come and visit if you're around. Okay, back to the episode. I really also want to say that Patty studied or interned with Dr. Joel Fuhrman, who was the first guest on the podcast, and so she learned about natural hygiene and real health with Dr. Fuhrman. And so you know where this is going. This is all about a holistic picture, understanding the body, how food is important for us. So guys, without further ado, let's dive into this wonderful conversation. Welcome, Patty. Hi, Patty. Thank you so much for joining The Green Life today. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm so excited about this. I'll be looking forward to it, and I know that it's Saturday, so thank you for making the time because I really appreciate that weekend. But yeah, I'm so excited about talking to you. So I found out about you through Dr. Morse, and I've listened to a couple of the Zoom calls that you guys do together to answer health questions of many that follow, and I was so impressed by two reasons. One, that I really love Dr. Morse, and so I think that his approach to health is very different and much more elevated to a lot of other even naturopaths. And so and then of course I learned about you and your style of teaching anatomy and physiology, which is so important. And I remember when I studied, I was like, oh my gosh, this stuff is horrible. But I actually really love the human body. But I don't know, it's the teacher that makes the whole difference. And so when you have somebody that just makes it so boring, you're like, I can't believe our body, it's impressive, but when you talk about it, it's just like this very different experience. And so I thought we have to have you on the podcast, especially as I already interviewed Dr. Morse, and the episode will come out this week on my podcast, but it's been on his website since a couple of weeks, actually, or months. So yeah, if people don't know who you are, can you just give me a little bit of your story and how you got into health and how you became a teacher of AMP?
Yes, of course. Back in the 1990s, I went to a regular medical school, an allopathic medical school, and a few things happened that kind of made me realize that I was going down the wrong path, just through vaccine injuries. I had one of my cousin's one of her children, passed away after being vaccinated. Oh. And then just a variety of things happened, and I became very disenchanted with medicine. But before I completely left, I started investigating more natural ways to heal, which I was totally clueless to. I mean, in the 1990s, this was a time there was really no internet. It wasn't like it was today, where you can just look into Google and find anything and become familiar with what we have access to today. But I started looking into various natural health modalities. I came across Dr. Joel Fuhrman, and I was intrigued, and he wrote a book about fasting, water fasting, to help people reverse disease. I called him up, talked to him, and I'm like, hey, I would like to do an internship. I'm a medical student. Is this something I can do? He said it was, and I stayed with him up in New Jersey. And I became so inspired with the people that were healing under his care that I decided to do my own 26-day water fast with him. He said it was okay. I was a young, healthy person. So it was just a phenomenal experience. And I remember talking to Dr. Furman, and he told me at the time, and Dr. Furman, I guess back in the 1990s, he wasn't as big as he is today. He's really expanded his offering to the plant-based community and to the natural healing community. And I think we have that possibility now with the advent of technology and internet. But back then he told me, I don't make much money actually as a doctor. I do more making money through teaching our speaking engagements and selling books, because he had a message to deliver. And the message is that plants can heal us, that nature can heal us. We don't need these chemicals, these toxins being introduced into our body to suppress symptoms. And that always stuck with me. And even though I was inspired by all of that, I ended up leaving medicine altogether. And I think, I was in my early 20s, and I wanted to, because actually doing a 26-day water fast and then, learning natural hygiene and following those principles, I had a lot of newfound energy that I wanted to actually use to do things and to explore the world. So I guess in my rebellious attitude, I joined a band and I started singing and playing guitar, and I had a lot of fun. But after a couple of years of that, I thought, okay, I need to actually earn an income, because playing gigs at the local bar across, down the street is not really going to support me down the road. So I started tutoring at a local college, and I really loved teaching because I had a lot of knowledge about the human body, having gone to med school, that I then later became a full-time college professor. So that's where I started to teach anatomy and physiology. And I still do that today, and that's my full-time job. But in the past, I guess it's been 22 years since I began teaching, I became a traditional naturopath, a detoxification specialist. I even went down to Florida and worked with Dr. Robert Morris for about a year, and that was just a great experience. So I did take a year off of teaching to work with him. And yeah, that's kind of my story. And I outside of teaching, I still work with clients, and I'm trying to build my own, kind of what Dr. Furman has and what Dr. Morse has. I'm trying to build my own online kind of platform to help people stay engaged with the detoxification process, because in working with so many clients, what I have found is that they get really excited, they get started, and then I kind of lose touch with them. And, I send them emails, I ask them how they're doing, but it's hard for people to stay disciplined. So I'm trying to create a program where we meet every week and we keep up that momentum so people really can heal. So that should be coming up this summer. But that's kind of what I've been up to.
Amazing. I can so relate to that. I find the same thing with my clients when, they start and they really have, we talk about the why you're doing this. They have their aim, their goal, but somehow along the way, whether because they don't have a support system or because their will is not very strong at the time, or because addictions can be quite hard to break. And then
Yes.
you don't have there someone that cheers you up all the time. They do lose track. And it's funny that it's the same MO. You contact them, they disappear. And then you're like, oh, okay. And then when they talk to you again, it's just like, oh, sorry, I couldn't do it. And it's like they're ashamed of talking to you that they cannot do it when they shouldn't be, because we are there to support them. But it's interesting. I think we see everybody does the same thing. When they go through it. So funny. So I've seen on your website that you have a lot of courses actually already, which are brilliant. And one of the ones that I like to start with is your AMP, because I noticed that you have two different kind of modules. You have one for allopathic medicine, so traditional AMP that you were studying biology class or medical school, but then you have the naturopathy one. And I'd like to know the difference between the two, if somebody's, even looking at your website and I'm wondering what it is. And I personally don't actually, I know some of the things, but I like to know the difference exactly between the two.
Well, I've been teaching the allopathically oriented anatomy and physiology for such a long time, and I had taught a hybrid course, and I used some of the material I created for that at my regular brick and mortar institution, not the one I'm currently at, but at a previous one, and I wanted to make that as an offering, and I did that initially, but then as I continued working with Dr. Morse and I started to incorporate some of his ideas of the human body and his practical understanding of the human body, which unfortunately scientific allopathic research doesn't always support, but it makes sense when we look at the body as a organism that takes in nutrition and has to detoxify waste products. It seems like the way we describe it allopathically doesn't make sense. Like, the lymphatic system dumping waste products back into the blood. That's something that Dr. Morse looked at, and I remember, when I first talked with him, he told me that, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what I teach. That's not what is in the textbooks. But I had to learn from him and his insights. So that's the kind of information with the anatomy and physiology courses that I'm teaching. And Dr. Morris is part of those courses. I teach the material, and then we have a Q&A session for the students afterwards where we can get a little bit deeper into the understanding and have his, wise wisdom being shared as answering some of the questions as well. So it's just different ways of looking at the human organism that are not in the traditional textbooks. So like, for instance, the last course we wrapped up, this one on the heart, I kind of explored some of the different ways we look at the cardiovascular system. And, is the heart truly a pump that pumps blood through thousands and thousands of miles of blood vessels? And when you look at the heart being the size of a fist, it really doesn't have that capacity, and there's something else that might be helping the blood move through these vessels. And Arnold Ehret has even touched upon this with the lungs are the driver of what's helping the blood move. Other even more current, more alternative natural healers like Tom Cowan, he gets into like the movement of the blood as being moved by electrical forces. And so there's these other ideas that I thought would be very nice to incorporate into an anatomy and physiology course, because a lot of the people wanting to go into the natural sciences have already had an experience that has taught them, much like myself, that allopathic medicine doesn't have all of the answers. And when you teach and when you learn about the body in only one way, it kind of puts blinders on you, and you only think of healing in one way. And we need to expand how we look at the human body and how we approach healing, because I think, especially over the past 3 or 4 years, many people have awakened to the fact that pharmaceutical drugs are not the answer to health, and we have to approach healing in a new way. And so people like Dr. Furman, like Dr. Morse, they have taught me very much, and I'm just trying to put forth and create this method of teaching other natural healers. So I can only work with so many clients one-on-one. I'd rather teach the next generation of naturopaths and detoxification specialists to really strengthen their ability to get this message out there.
I love that. And I'd like to ask you about one specific part of the body, because this is one thing, and I definitely noticed in my A&P books,
Welcome back.
is
In
not highlighted or
tutorial,
understood
we are
at all.
going
And
to walk-
obviously, after listening to you, Dr. Morris, you speak about the lymphatic system a lot. And Dr. Morris has a way to say, and you do now as well, which is, the blood is the kitchen, and the lymphatic system is the bathroom, because whatever there's the ingestion of food, the the propagation of the nutrients that have to go to the cells, but then the waste has to go somewhere, and where does it go? And of course, we know that we have organs that are detoxification organs, like kidneys, skin, gut, but there is something missed with the lymphatic system. For example, the lymphatic system was very lightly touched in my course, and then I only really looked at it from a different perspective when I was doing massage therapy, early 20s, But I know from Dr. Morse that even that is not taught correctly. But of course, and now I know why. But at the time, it was really the first kind of introduction to lymphatic system as much. And so why is it not really discussed as much? Why, first of all, what is the lymphatic system exactly? And also, why in allopathic AMP is not discussed as much? And why is it not really, there's no emphasis on the importance of it?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that even the scientists that study the lymphatic system and lymphatic organs, they don't have a really firm understanding of what this organ system actually does. I remember when Dr. Morse, put into my mind that the lymphatic system should not be draining back into the blood. I started looking at scientific research and I'm like, they don't know what they're talking about. The way they're describing this, they say, well, this could happen, and this is the theory as to what's going on, but it's not like a firm, like this is exactly what happens. And I've asked questions like, how do you know the lymphatic system is flowing up the thoracic duct and going right into the subclavian vein? What tells you that's the movement it's going into? Maybe it's going in the opposite direction. We can't look at movement in a dead organism, and that's where they usually do their studies, because it's hard to assess the movement of lymph in a living organism. You have to do something very invasive, and these lymphatic vessels are very thin, and it's hard to see exactly what's going on. So I think it's all theory, their understanding of the movement of lymph. And I think what Dr. Morse is proposing is just as, and probably a more likely explanation of what's really going on. So what the lymphatic system is, to kind of explain that, it's an organ system that contains a series of vessels that exist outside of our blood vessels, but always with the blood vessels, because the blood is delivering the nourishment, the lymphatic system is taking many waste products away. So they're always going to be there side by side. And in addition to those lymphatic vessels, the lymphatic system also includes a lot of organs, like the thymus that sits above the heart, the spleen, the lymph nodes, the tonsils. These are part of the lymphatic system as well, because they all contain immune cells, as do the lymph nodes, which the lymphatic vessels course through. So our immune system is part of the lymphatic system. And, in the allopathic courses that I teach to my health students at the, again, Brick and Mortar Institute, one of the things I say about the lymphatic system is that it's a fluid balance system. So it helps to balance fluids in our body, because if it doesn't take away excess fluid away from organs and tissues, that fluid builds up. And you can see this most richly when you see like surgeries for women that have had breast cancer. And they'll take away, the cancerous lump, they'll cut that out, but they'll also remove a bunch of the lymphatic vessels and lymph nodes in that area, because they always like to take a lymph node out, look for cancer cells, because that's evidence that the lymphatic system is doing what it's supposed to do, right? But they yank it out because there's a cancer cell there. And when they remove that, the arm next to where that tumor was removed becomes incredibly swollen. And I remember working with a client who one arm was like this big and the other arm was so tiny, because she had so much lymphatic vessels and nodes removed. And I want to say it was like over 50 or 60 lymph nodes removed.
Oh, wow.
And it's just tragic what they do in the name of trying to help somebody heal, because it's the antithesis of healing. But fluid balance is a big role. And if fluids don't move away from tissue spaces and they build up, you create a very toxic environment. So that's a lot of what the lymphatic system does. It's a very important organ system. Keeping the lymph moving is quite important, and by moving our bodies, we move the lymph. The lymphatic vessels don't have, as much of a push, because even though the heart might not be 100% responsible for moving the blood, it does create a force, and other things are helping the blood move. But the lymphatic vessels, they're very similar to our veins in that they're under very low pressure. So we have to contract our muscles, we have to stretch, we have to move. And movement is part of, natural hygiene, getting safe exercise and getting out in the sun and moving our body and experiencing nature. So just really living according to nature will move the lymph if we, embrace the outdoors and do what humans should do. I mean, we have arms and legs with muscles for a reason. We shouldn't be sitting in a cubicle for 40 hours a week. But yeah, the fluid movement, fluid balance, and protecting us with our immune cells, that's really the function of the lymphatic system. And it's very important in healing because the beginning of disease is where you have a tissue that typically has trapped toxins, trapped metabolic waste products, and they can't be removed easily because the lymphatic system isn't helping to remove those. And when those toxins and waste products, which are usually acidic, when they stay at a tissue too long, they create inflammation, which is a normal response to anything tragic. When you injure yourself, that area becomes inflamed. When you have something come into your tissues, like we call it an infection, it becomes inflamed. And so the inflammation is a red flag. But again, if we're still not removing the toxicity and it stays there even longer, inflammation then becomes tissue change, which could express itself as cancer or ulceration. So that's how these diseases develop. And it begins with us not clearing the lymphatic fluids around a tissue. It all starts there. So a lot of times when we're working with clients, or when I'm working with a client, I'm sure you do this the same, we use herbs and diet to help get the lymphatic system to move once again.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the lymphatic system does not dump toxins back in the blood, which makes sense, even though people think it is, because obviously the blood can find homeostasis and bring back their alkaline pH by, obviously taking minerals off other parts of the body. But that is a very inefficient way the body would work, because if you think about it, our body is just so well designed that that doesn't even make sense. Where does lymph actually bring the toxins then to bring it out?
Well, I mean, I wish I had definitive data and research to show this, but Dr. Morse's idea, and I agree with him, is that the kidneys are filtering our lymph. So there is a course I'm going to start with Dr. Morse this summer on the lymphatic system, and we're going to discuss, what's a theory, because again, I don't have a research lab. I can't, and even if I could, it would probably be very invasive and very damaging to the humans or the animals we would have to look at to prove this definitively. But there are lymphatic vessels in the kidneys, and they're wrapped around the nephron and the different components of the nephron, which are the functional units of the kidneys. And I do believe that the kidneys filter both the blood and the lymph. Mm-hmm. The kidneys play a vital function in regulating blood pressure. And so there is blood flow through the kidneys, and there the kidneys, what they're doing is they're helping to keep the blood in homeostasis. So everything that's traveling in the blood, if you've ever looked at like blood work and you see like what your patient's levels are next to the normal range, well, those normal ranges in the blood, a lot of that is regulated by the kidney. So they can remove what we have too much of, they can retain what we have too little of, and many hormones target the kidneys to help keep the body in homeostasis. But in addition to blood vessels in the kidneys, we have lymphatic vessels. And I feel, even though I cannot prove this, and many people want the proof because we're so much in this mind that we have to have science to have a machine to show us how something works. But I feel like the lymphatic fluids, as they're wrapped around the nephron, a lot of the waste products are also drawn into these nephrons, which will then dump into what will become the urine, much as the blood does. So that's kind of the mechanism I'm going to put forth as I put together this definitive course with Dr. Morse to kind of explain what we think it is. If I had billions of dollars and I could create a lab, maybe I would start looking at it. But again, I can't do animal research. I was in a PhD program where I tried to do that and it was just too hard. So the research in science can be sometimes, it's like, what's the purpose of us doing this? If we're here to create love and life, why are we harming animals?
Yeah, I know. That's my conundrum too. As much as I would love to prove a lot of things, that would have to come with. And I mean, I would have no problem working with humans because they could be like, okay, I want to do it, although it would probably be horrible for them. But animals cannot consent, and I always feel like this is really so wrong. But I know, and I do appreciate the advances in medicine and science that have come because of the research that we have done. I'm not pooping on it. It's just that, as you said, that is the ethical parts that is so hard for me to go against because of where I am right now in my life path. And as you know, we're all about really love, kindness, and nurturing, and it just goes against that. So it's difficult. And I think as scientists, anybody that wants to be, and I don't like to call it science per se because I think everybody's thinking white coats and, it's got to be to the point, which it never is anyway, not even in science, but in wellness and research and discovering of the truth, looking for the truth, or truth seeking. At this point in my life, and I think for you too, it needs to be aligned to values, which can be quite hard. But I do appreciate what they've accomplished so far. There is a point that you make, with the lymph and the kidneys, which are really, to me, it makes sense as well. This is why I resonate so well with what Dr. Morris and you talk about, because there is one factor, obviously, if the lymphatic system has to bring the waste into through the kidney so it can go out through urine, then we go into the topic of like how urine should look. And a lot of allopathic doctors always want to see this clear urine, which is like, oh, you have well hydrated and all good, your kidneys are fine. But actually, if we are not filtering, that's one of the issues. So I like you to touch on that because a lot of people really don't understand that, and I understand why. We've been taught completely wrong. But can you touch about filtration and what urine actually should look like?
Yes, of course. The kidneys, if we were to sum up the kidney function in one sentence, is the kidneys filter our bodily fluids. They help to maintain homeostasis in the blood, and they remove waste products from the lymph. So every day we're always filtering out things from those bodily fluids, because if they build up too high, we are unbalanced, we're out of homeostasis, which is disease, and we have too many waste products, which is disease. So we need both of these bodily fluids to be moving things out. So with the urine, I think when a person who is ill and they come to a naturopath or a detoxification specialist to try to find health, we like to see evidence of things that are stuck in their tissue spaces as coming out. And since the lymph is carrying a lot of this congestion, a lot of this agglomerated, like protein and other waste products, it's pulling them out of the tissue spaces and carrying them along these lymphatic vessels towards the kidneys, that when that comes out, we see it in the urine, right? And that's like, hey, great, we're actually removing the waste products. And after that, you're going to start seeing improved health. So I know, as I work with clients, and, it took me some time before I saw evidence of the benefit of filtering and seeing the white stuff, the cloudy urine, and seeing how that was actually a good thing. I remember working with a client, this was while I was down in Florida working with Dr. Morris, but she was having a terrible time with swelling in her feet and her ankles. And we were working on it in a couple of different ways and using the herbs and, doing things like, the lymphatic massage towards the kidneys, the dry skin brushing. And she actually brought up, the client, like, should I try some dry fasting? At that time, I think Hildy Larson was having some benefit with dry fasting. And I'm like, I think maybe we can give it a go because, why not try it if nothing else has worked? And she dry fasted for about 36 hours, and that did the trick. I mean, then she saw the cloudy urine, and then her swelling in her feet and ankles came down. I mean, it helped. It reversed what she was going through, and that was just like the little push she needed to get it all out. She didn't do like a really long extended dry fast, and dry fasting is not for everybody, but for her, it was the tool that helped her to open up that area of her body, to remove that congestion that was trapped in her tissue spaces, and to draw it up to the kidneys and out into the urine. And we saw the cloudy urine, we saw the swelling come down, and there you have it. So Dr. Morris doesn't say these things because he thinks it's something that should work. He sees evidence of this. And since then, I've seen this help other clients. So it's one of those things that it's not going to be the first thing I recommend, dry fasting, but if we get to a wall, it might be the thing that helps to get us to the other side of healing.
That's super interesting. And then you mentioned something as well when you're talking about the kidneys, science wants proof. But okay, we have proof that the kidneys regulate the blood and that regulate blood pressure, but we don't really know much about the lymphatic system. So I feel that even discarding the option that lymph go into the kidneys, it's a little bit obnoxious saying, oh, we don't have proof. And you mentioned why we don't, right? So it would be very invasive, it's very delicate and not easily studied. But why do you think like we have these walls, right, when it comes to health? Is it, and I don't want to get conspiratorial about it because I know, I mean, we easily can go there, but is there an agenda why, according to you and your experience, that we keep things in a certain way, and if we don't know it, we just kind of don't really teach about it much. So, for example, the lymphatic system is touched upon very, very briefly, not really got into, and then we move on to the next thing. Yeah, what have you seen through your experiences? Like, do you feel like there's an agenda about it, or is it really just down to the fact that they can't explain it?
Well, I mean, I think that there might be an agenda that they're not looking into it because, you know, allopathic medicine, which is right there with the pharmaceutical industry, they've got a good thing going. I mean, like over the pandemic, Big Pharma made a lot of money, and the people that were selling that method of treatment, um, you know, they are the ones that won. They came out well ahead of everybody else. I mean, there's even video footage of Bill Gates talking about what an investment that, going into vaccinations is. So it's really sad. I mean, it's not like they're hiding it, their wins and how much money they're making. But I think that when you have a good thing going, you're going to hold on to that as tightly as possible. So when we look at how that relates to the kidneys and the lymphatic system in the blood, well, the blood is something that, because it's more easy to study, and Big Pharma has created a lot of drugs which are based on unbalanced, too high, too low levels of certain chemicals in the blood. Like if you have too much water in the blood, that's high blood pressure, right? Because blood volume goes up, blood pressure goes up. You have too much of anything in the blood or too little of anything. There's a drug that can address that. So in medicine today, and this is one of the things that really bothered me when I was in medical school, is that doctors were more interested in blood work and reports of tests than they were in the actual physical living human being that was right in front of them. I mean, you would have doctors walk into a patient room and they're just looking at the chart and they're not even looking into the eyes of their patient. There's no physical connection. They're in, they talk for maybe 10 minutes and they're out of there. And as somebody that is, very empathic, when I walk into a room, my heart was pouring out for these people that were suffering. I remember doing clinical rounds, and I remember this one lady who was like in her 90s, and she had Alzheimer's disease, and her hands were so frail, and I just wanted to hold her hands, and I could tell that there was something she was longing for, and she was sad, and that broke my heart. I'm like, I don't want to just throw chemicals at this poor woman. I want to reach out to what does her soul need. And so I know I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there, but Big Pharma doesn't care about those things. They just care about selling a medication that can pinpoint something that's easy for them to fix. And if the patient somewhat benefits from that, or at least if they have a pain reduction, then they're going to keep buying that, right? They have to have a little bit of benefit for the patient. Usually it's symptom suppression. It's not really getting to the heart of the cure. Which is why I think, in the United States of America, we rank so low on our health benefits, even though we spend the most money on medicine. I mean, many other countries, you're going to be healthier than in the United States. We're like low of the low, right? People here are sick, they're struggling, and they're, again, under a mind control that the people in the white coats, the allopaths, the doctors, they have the answers. And when you look at jobs, like my job as a college professor, I have healthcare insurance. I don't use it. I don't want what they're selling me. I actually go, because I have to have a primary care physician, I go to a homeopath as my primary care physician. And if I have a symptom, he'll give me a remedy, and I'd rather treat it with energy than treat it with something chemical that will create toxicity in my body. I mean, but usually I don't have symptoms because I know how to keep, my body clean, and I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. So it's one of those things. I do think there might be, at the top, I think there is an agenda to keep big pharma in power. And, the doctors are the drug pushers. They're the drug dealers of big pharma. They're the ones selling the drugs, and big pharma's making all of the money.
Yeah, and I appreciate that a lot of doctors don't know better because
They don't.
after you spend a lot of time studying, Dr. Clapper always says he wants to reach out to the young students before they go into pharmacosis.
Yes. I had, when I was an undergrad, and I wish I would have listened to him, but when I was an undergrad, I had one of my professors there. He said to me, because he knew I was a pre-med student and I was on my way to med school, he's like, "Are you sure you want to go to medical school?" I'm like, in my mind, I was, my parents were like, "You're going to medical school." I wasn't ready to hear what he had to say, but he's like, "You're too smart for that. You should go into scientific research." And he was a natural biologist, and I really loved going outside and exploring nature and learning biology by being in the middle of nature. Um, but I had this track in mind, and I was just focused on that. And it took an awakening. It took me to kind of break out of that mental bondage that had me trapped into that type of thinking. But I like what Dr. Clapper said. If we could just reach these individuals before they go down that road, I think many people would, if you want to help people heal, they would come to our side and find true remedy for the people they would work with.
Or at least implement more lifestyle medicine, because I do understand after you spend so many, the US has one of the most expensive educational systems. So of course, a lot of doctors are in huge debt and they're like, well, I can't really go into something that doesn't pay a lot of money. And that's kind of selling out, but I understand why, because it's a trap. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. And, kind of trying to do something different. But if they implemented lifestyle medicine, like a lot of them now are doing, it could already help. But of course, it's never going to be perfect. I see one of your pups there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's difficult. I mean, but on the same token, like we have the same in Europe. For example, I lived in the UK. We now are in Portugal. My dad is from Italy. Like there are systems, obviously, that offer state-sponsored healthcare. It's not better than private. The only difference is that your government is going to take your tax money to pay the pharmaceutical companies. Just that's really the only difference, because still the doctors are not educated in lifestyle medicine. They still push medications, which really does kind of highlight the fact that these big corporations have massive deals with governments, and people don't really think about that. And that, again, the curriculum in all schools is not focused on health and healing, rather managing disease and or symptoms. And one thing that really kind of frustrates me a little bit is, and I know that the US has the reputation of having the worst, health of the first, like, kind of advanced countries, if you want to say. But I think the only difference is that the US is really big in comparison to looking at GDP of singular countries in Europe. But I from my experience, I think we're all as bad as one another. We're like all in a real poop pot because even here the health of people is shocking. The heart disease is massive. Men in their 40s look like they're pregnant, basically 9 months pregnant. They look battered by the time they're like 60. And it's really sad to see there's so many ailments that could be reversed and prevented even just by having a good lifestyle and eating no animal flesh and just really vegetables and fruit, which takes me to the next thing. As you obviously are on a high vibrational diet, it baffles me that doctors and don't have any education in nutrition, by the way, or nutritionists who you think are afraid of fruit. What's up with that?
Yeah, I know. I mean, even some natural health doctors, they limit the fruit. They add just a little bit of fruit, but not, a lot. And I think that the problem with fruit, and there is no problem with fruit. First and foremost, it's an amazing food. I think, biologically, I feel that humans are frugivores. When you look at our anatomy and physiology, we have color vision to see when a fruit ripens. We have hands that can pick a fruit, right? And we have taste buds that really like sweetness, and that's because fruits are naturally sweet. I think where they're coming from is they like to couple sugar all into one category, both the processed sugars and the natural sugars. And so that's where they, in their mind, where they get trapped, they just think sugar is bad from all sources. I think, and even so, with that said, I think when people are really toxic and they eat a bunch of fruit, they get sick, right? Because when you're holding toxicity, you felt sick when the toxicity came in, and then it gets trapped because your body, if it can't eliminate it, it just tucks it away and it's trying to protect you. But then when you open those channels of elimination up and the toxicity comes out, because the fruit's helping that process, they're going to feel sick again. And when you tell that to a doctor, they're going to be like, well, you better stop eating all that fruit. That's making you sick. What's making the person sick is what their original lifestyle was, and their probably original medications and original vaccinations and all of that. Those are what make us sick originally. And when we hide things away and then open it up, we have to release it somehow. So yeah, I'm not sure why people don't like fruit. I think it's a lovely food. It gives you a lot of pure energy, and it's just it's packaged with everything that you need to metabolize the fructose or the glucose, the two primary sugars that fruit gives us. When you eat processed fruit, or I'm sorry, when you eat processed sugars, you're devoid of all of those minerals that are part of the cellular respiration mechanism. And so you're clogging your system, and it's not giving you any energy, it's just clogging you up. But when you and then with that said, a lot of those sugars get converted to fat. Excuse me. And that's where we start seeing, people eating a lot of high fructose corn syrup. They end up with things like fatty liver disease. So that's where the bad reputation of sugar comes from. It's the processed sugars that are killing us. It's not the fruit sugars. When you eat fruit in its natural state and it's coupled with the fiber, the minerals, the even amino acids and fatty acids, you're getting all of it in fruit. And the pure, beautiful distilled water that the fruit tree pulled up from the earth and naturally distills, all of that is delivered into our body. It's just the ideal food for us. So it's very sad that it gets a bad reputation at all.
Yeah, I mean, my father, he has heart disease and diabetes, and finally he asked for help. He's very stubborn, and he thinks he's like a nutritional expert because he heard something on TV. So I'm like, yeah, you need to really stop with this protein BS. And I said to him, if you want me to help you, you have to do what I say. And so I put him on mostly fruit and some veg, mostly raw, a little bit cooked at night. I mean, I have to be gentle with him because he's not in the same country, and if I scare him, he won't do any of it. I would put him just on fruit, and he has type 2 diabetes. But I said to him, watch what happens. And even though he's having also vegetables, his glucose is slowly going down without medication. And he's on a bunch of other medication for blood pressure and other things that he got on before, I don't know when. And of course, that will also impact your metabolic rate and your, even your glucose. But considering he's taking all this medication, even for digestion, because he has poor hydrochloric acid, so he gets acid reflux because his body's trying to make more acid to digest the food, and obviously, and then they keep on giving him proton pump inhibitors, which is not helping. I was like, oh my gosh. And but slowly, as he's eating this kind of diet, his heartburn is getting less because his body knows how to digest these sugars. And so I'm like, yeah, you have to give your time. Also, you have to give your body time to heal. Because I feel like a lot of people just because of this mentality of taking medication and immediately feeling the result, they want this silver bullet. Well, it is not working. I'm like, well, it took you years to get sick. Give it a moment, So that's a very interesting one. But I see it with my family. Like they have a perfect example. Like I'm being plant-based since 2013. I'm transitioning to more fruit. Like I'm in my 40s. I look better now than in my 20s. So I'm just like, aside from the white hair, but like it's proven. It's not. I'm not making it up. And still there's like this disconnect from reality because of what they've been taught for so many years. And I mean, I can tell you, I'm studying nutrition at the Energetic Health Institute again because I really wanted something more holistic. And even then, I eat about like I don't know 18 bananas a day. But I had one of my lecturers, correct one of my reports, and he was like, "Oh, that's too much sugar." Like, no, that really isn't too much sugar. Like, I promise you.
Yeah,
Like,
I wish people would understand anatomy and physiology. I mean, a lot of these even natural health colleges, they have an A&P course, usually one or two. Our liver knows what to do with the glucose, right? So as long as the liver is working appropriately and it's not over inundated with processed sugars, natural sugars from fruit, which come in slowly because the fiber helps to naturally allow them to enter the blood and then they're delivered to all of our cells. The excess glucose or the excess fructose is taken to the liver, and the liver can store it as glycogen. Only when we're getting a lot of processed stuff, when it, can't do anything more with the glycogen stores, it will convert it to fat. But the glucose can also be converted into amino acids, to fatty acids. I mean, the liver is this chemical factory that when it's healthy, it can do amazing things with the glucose where it's a lie that we need all of these other nutrients coming in, because from glucose, we can produce everything. And I shouldn't say just glucose, fructose too, with both of these simple sugars. Fructose is, I think even a little bit more elevated in position because Dr. Morse recently found a research article that stated that in our brain, the glucose is converted back to fructose.
Yeah, that's from Yale. That's from Yale. You can't get more mainstream than that, right?
Yeah. Exactly, indicating that fructose is probably, the pinnacle of the energy molecule that we need for our cells. And, by metabolizing fructose, we do get more ATP compared to glucose.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me now. And I was afraid of fruit because I studied nutrition the first time with the same kind of narrative. Like you need protein, low carbs. I mean, we need carbs. We thrive on carbs, people. Sure, not the fried and the whatever snack bars and stuff, but. And now everybody's just on these high protein, high fat diets, and it's like a disaster.
It really is. It's quite scary, and I see it in clients that I work with because a lot of them have come over to our side from the keto and the carnivore camps, and so many people suffered because of that. Yeah, they lost a lot of weight, but losing weight is not always an indication of health.
Yeah.
You can lose weight the healthy way, or you can lose weight an unhealthy way. I mean, for goodness sake, chemotherapy will help you lose weight, right? And chemotherapy is nothing but pouring acids into the blood. I mean, and chemotherapy causes people to become anemic. I mean, it has so many terrible side effects for the poor people that are undergoing that therapy for cancer. So just because something is helping you lose weight doesn't mean it's helping you heal.
Yeah, totally. And that's one correlation that people have to stop making directly. And there is also this, I think, again, the dysmorphia that we all have because of the media, because, thin, super thin is healthy and, overweight. But like we all have different body compositions and we have to find what is healthy for us. Like genetically, where is our composition like, where do you store more fat? But if you eat that diet that is made for your species, which is mostly fruit and mostly raw and denatured and whole, if you want to have your whole grains, okay, have whole grains, don't have processed grains, don't have flesh, then you are going to look the best that you can, because your physiology wants to be at the right place, like even with your where you're storing certain things. But we just don't have that in mind. And Dr. Furman, actually, who you obviously did your internship with and was on the first episode, he was talking about this, beauty of any size kind of propaganda. And it's, when he said it, it's like I want to make sure that everybody understands I'm not fat shaming or talking about I'm not criticizing bigger people. I'm just saying we can't just eat whatever we want because size doesn't matter. Like your size, your specific size will come through if you're having a proper nutrition, and you'll notice actually you're not meant to be that big anyway. Like your body's just not naturally that big. There are some very rare cases of genetic obesity, but they are so small, and everybody, the pharmaceuticals are making a lot of money on this. So it's genetics, and it's not. And it's fascinating because again, this is all science, by the way. You can prove anything. Like has been proven that it's genetic, and it's been proven that it's not genetic. Like so you have to really use common sense and intuition to heal. You can't just be like, this is what the paper says, because we are so complex. We have so many chemical reactions in our body every single second of the day. Like you can just pinpoint this and this and this. And I think we really lost that connection to that part of our physiology big time. I have a question for you because obviously you teach anatomy and physiology in a kind of standard institution, not so much as an alternative holistic one. How do you balance out what you know from the naturopathic side, and not even naturopathic, from Dr. Morse's side, because a lot of naturopaths don't actually know that, what you know, to actually bring it to a more mainstream, let's say, institution? And do they put stops as to what you can teach?
Well, at the college I teach at, we have 15-week semesters. And there's so much to the human body that we have to cram into that 15 weeks. I just kind of basically teach the essentials of how the human body works, what it's made up of, what are the physiological processes taking place. And I wish I had more time to go into some of these other ideas. I will say, and it's not as common these days, but in my earlier years of teaching, students were curious about certain things. Like I would have students ask about vaccinations and various medical procedures, and I would give them my honest opinion. I would always state that this is not in your textbook. I won't test you over this, but you asked a question, and as an educator, I want to share with you my experience and understanding of this. Today's students, I think, unfortunately, and I think this is an expression of what, phones and things like that have done to the youth of our time. Students aren't that curious about those things anymore. They just don't care. So I just teach what I'm supposed to teach, how things work, how the urinary system works, how the cardiovascular system works, what are the organs, what are they made up of. And that fills up the time I have with my students, definitely. But the lack of curiosity has really kind of made me quite sad, because I used to enjoy those discussions with my students. And today, students in the hallway, they're all sitting there looking down at their phones. They come into class, they take notes, and then they leave. And there's no curiosity. So something is going on with, I think, either the educational system or the just the brainwashing ability of a lot of these devices, where students are trapped mentally. And I think this, and again, I know you mentioned you didn't want to get too conspiratorial, but I think there is something going on to help guide humans' minds into a specific direction. Mm-hmm. And, psychology and propaganda has been heavily invested in by governments to learn how can they best control their populations. And they're doing it. And so it's really hard to tap into a mind that has no desire to want to learn. And they just want to jump through the hoops to get their degree, their nursing degree, their medical degree. But they're not really wanting to know the true source of health. It's just, job security.
That's very sad. How, since when did you see this shift happening?
Well, it began, I want to say, about 10 years ago. Like I said, I've been teaching for about 22 years. I remember one of my first full-time jobs back in 2004. I was teaching in Arizona, and I remember having a discussion with one of the early childhood development instructors at the college. And back then, vaccines were not taboo. It's like today, you can't say that word on YouTube or Facebook because you'll get banned. But back then, it was just like, oh, this is something that people get, vaccinations. And I started to share with that instructor about some of the dangers of vaccinations that had happened to me, people in my family, what I noticed. And she was saying that a lot of her students that are going into early childhood development are asking about vaccines with the children that they're teaching. And she asked if I would come to her class and talk about that. And I gave a presentation and I took time for question and answer. And I even brought up things like thimerosal and various childhood vaccinations, which contain mercury, and how there could be a link with autism. And, God forbid today you bring up that link, they'll ban you like they did with a lot of people, who touched upon that. And so that has totally changed. So as time has progressed, now you can't bring it up, right? And I really thought, because I was during the pandemic, I was teaching remotely, so as everybody was. We were stuck in our houses. And then I thought, when we come back to campus, I bet these students are going to have a new curiosity about this messenger RNA vaccine, because I really heavily researched it, and I thought they'd be curious about it. No curiosity. They don't care. They don't want to know about it. They just know they've been told it was safe, so they're going to take it.
Oh my.
And so, so that's kind of it. It's disheartening, and it's part of the reason why I'm really putting in a lot of effort to build up, a larger online platform to help people that really want to heal, because I've got a lot of passion about this. And when I don't feel that passion reflected back to me and my students, it makes my job less fulfilling. But when I'm working with my clients and I can see how passionate they are about reversing their ill health, I want to funnel my energy in that direction. And I want to funnel my energy in helping the people that are attracted to Dr. Morris's message and have, wanting to learn about helping others, or just wanting to learn about helping themselves or their family. Yeah. And so I'm trying to shift away from, the allopathic 40-hour-a-week full-time job, which I'm grateful is, helping me survive right now as I build this other, way of supporting myself and supporting my community.
Do you have any of your students that come to you and want to do different courses with you, or know that you do the more naturopathic approach to AMP and are curious and become students of yours offline or online, I should say, off campus? Do you have anyone?
Not at my current college. I try to keep things, I will, every now and then I'll have a student that comes up to me because we talk about health. Anatomy and physiology is about the human body. And this hasn't happened recently, but I know like 5-6 years ago, before the pandemic, students would come up to me, knowing that I used to go to medical school, thinking that, she's got medical knowledge. They'd ask me things, and they'd usually be surprised when I would have like an answer about changing their diet. Mm-hmm. Or I had one student that told me that her child had really bad allergies. And I'm like, well, have you thought about removing milk from their diet? Because that usually takes care of it, right? Milk is so congestive. And she actually was kind of surprised. She's like, what about his bones? He needs milk for calcium. So I try to because these students aren't expecting that. And I think I'm pretty radical when it comes to, how my approach at healing, that I just kind of sprinkle a little bit of advice without inundating them with too much. But, I do leave the door open, so I'm more than happy to go into a lot of detail if they want that. But as you know, you can't force anybody to want to know any of this. So, but yeah, unfortunately, my students that I currently have, they're not really showing any desire. I did have one student recently, though, that told me that she's allergic to everything, and the only thing she can eat is fruit. And I'm like, well, that's great. You're probably going to be very healthy. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, you don't know what is a blessing. Well, let's talk about your programs then, because obviously, as you said, aside from teaching AMP, you actually work with clients and you work on detox. You're a detoxification specialist, and I like to tap into detox because, of course, you probably saw a lot of influencers and that make their channels big by being critical of anything that has been used as a marketing. And of course, yes, detox as a word has been used as a buzzword in marketing, but there is something to be said. And of course, yes, the body detoxes the body, but what does it mean for someone like you to work with a person to detox them when we know that the body is doing that already?
Yeah, thank goodness the body is doing that already, even for the people that are really sick. Because if our body did no detoxification, then we would only live on this planet a short while before we would succumb to the toxins. It's just about keeping the tissue spaces between our cells clear of debris, clear of waste products. There are channels to draw these things away from these cells, and that's what detoxification is simply. It's something our body always does, but can we help the body do that in a way that will really address an issue we're dealing with? Because a lot of people think, well, my body's already detoxifying, so why do I need to do anything about it? Well, you're obviously, if you're sick, your body's not doing it well enough. So we're just strengthening what the body already does. And that's really what naturopathy should be, working with the laws of nature to help the body do what it already does. So a lot of what I recommend, it's not suppressing organ function or suppressing tissue function. It's helping to enhance tissue and organ function to help the body get through, this congestion that's holding it back, and to break that open and release the anything that was trapped in those tissue spaces. Get it out into the urine, get it out through the skin, open up the channels of elimination. That's when you're going to feel the vital forces move through you most notably, and you're going to feel amazing.
And so, should people be wary of, and we said detoxification has been used in marketing a lot, and there are products out there that they sell even in pharmacies or supermarkets or like detox. Should people be aware of, like, wary of that and actually understand that that alone is not going to make a difference? Because I feel like, again, with the silver bullet approach that we all been brainwashed to think that we should follow, people want this, oh, it's a green powder, it's going to be detoxifying me. Yeah, how do you feel about that, and what should people really think about when they're looking at these products?
Yeah, well, I think it is marketing to think that you can just buy, some pills or buy like a little kit and within a week be detoxified. It doesn't work like that. I mean, you have to reflect upon what brought you to the state of illness where you are right now, and how that didn't occur overnight. That didn't occur within a week or even a month. There was a long, set of actions that you took that led to where you are today. So picking the wrong foods, not getting enough sleep, having a stressful job, having a relationship that you're feeling, not listened to. I mean, there's different levels of this. We can go from the spiritual level to the mental, the emotional, to the physical. All of this, together brings forth your state of being and how you feel, how you think. And so nothing in a box, in a bottle of pills, is going to detoxify what is creating your illness. It takes lifestyle changes. It takes actually opening your mind and embracing new ideas. All of this together, and really what I like to tell my clients when I work with them, this is the shadow work that you've been called to do. This illness is your opportunity to turn your life around. Because when you really embrace this and you live it, you might find that you're going to want a new job. You might find that you have new relationships, and old relationships will fall, but new relationships will come to your opportunity to, really express who you're meant to be. So it's just a call to action to elevate. And that's what this really is. Detoxification is just the mechanism that we're supporting, but it's not, I would never tell a client that, well, I work with you for 3 months, because that's usually my initial consultation is like a 3-month process to, begin opening up the channels of elimination. But, unless you make a visit with me after those 3 months, and I support you during those 3 months, but after that, unless you do a follow up, you have to carry that forward. And if you can do it on your own, great. I try to educate you as much as possible so that you don't need me anymore. Unlike allopathic medicine, I don't want repeat customers. I want people to embrace the knowledge, take it, use it to bring forth a healthy state of being and enjoy life, really, because that's what we're here to do. We're not here to be just focused on illness all of the time. We should be exploring and elevating our minds and, enjoying what this planet has to offer us while we're here.
Yeah, you mentioned something that makes me think about this, and I like your opinion on it. So we see a lot of people that come to us when they are not well. But then, again, the manifestation of disease or not feeling great, it's not necessarily where it starts, the starting point. And there are a lot of people that maybe are not aware that they're not well, and they feel okay. Maybe they're used to their low energy in the morning, and the coffee will settle up, and they're like, I'll take my coffee and I feel okay, not knowing that that's already a sign. But all these things, like, what should people that are seemingly without ailments do to make sure that actually they really are healthy? Because again, not having symptoms doesn't mean you are healthy 100%.
Right, yeah. And symptoms are just a way to grab our attention to help us realize that we're not healthy. But if you're not having symptoms, I mean, that could be problematic because the disease has been so pushed deeply into your core that you're used to that level of being at that point. So, and it's a tough thing to address about what can you do to people that aren't exactly ill enough to come and want to work with us. I think, again, our society is offering people that are so sick a way to exist and not elevate. When you're stuck inside and you're watching Netflix all day, and you can have, in America, we have Uber drivers that can deliver food to you. I mean, you can just kind of sit at home all day and never leave and exist, but at some point it's going to catch up with you, right? So, it is good to check in with yourself. And oftentimes, like I said, an illness, a diagnosis can be a gift because it's saying, hey, wake up. You're not good. You need to do something. You need to change. Otherwise, this is going to bring you really deeply down. I mean, into the ground down. So unless you make a change, you're on the wrong path. So, I celebrate people that have gotten the news that, okay, I need to make a change and let's do this. But yeah, if you're kind of not open to the fact that your health might not be where it needs to be, and you won't know that until you put your body to the test. I mean, maybe after 10 years of sitting in your house all day, and then you decide, you know what, I'm gonna, maybe join a league and join like a football league and play some sports. And then you realize you can't run more than, a half a meter or like a 50 meters, and then you just kind of keel over out of breath. I mean, that's not good. Our bodies are meant to, move and breathe in oxygen and all of that. So yeah, it's tough when people don't have symptoms. And what's even more tough is when you're working with them and the symptoms go away and they think they're done. Usually there's deeper levels that we could get to, and I'm more than happy to kind of get you to that optimal level. But some people, when they detoxify, and I remember my detoxification experience. I mean, I did water fasting, but then later down the road, I did 6 months on fruit. And I remember like by month 2 or 3, my energy was through the roof. I felt amazing. I just wanted, I wasn't, I mean, I would jog like maybe a couple of miles here and there. I started jogging like 6 to 7 miles a day because I just had this vibrant energy running through me.
Wow. Yeah, I know. It's amazing how I think, people don't know how bad they feel until they feel better. Sometimes, even if they don't have symptoms. So I feel like everybody should do that. So you said that your consultation at the beginning is about 3 months, but how long does it take somebody to fully, if they stick to a protocol, to fully cleanse and to fully detox and feel like the major difference?
Well, I mean, sometimes it happens rather quickly. I mean, I've had clients, I had one man about a year ago who came to me because He was borderline Graves' disease, and that's a type of hyperthyroidism. And the doctor told him they would have to, give him, radioactive iodine to destroy his thyroid gland or surgically remove it. And he was panicked. He's like, I don't want those options. Help. And he was strict with the protocol. He did juicing. That's what he wanted to do. And I supported him on that. He was a big fan of John Rose. And within a month, his numbers were back to normal. He didn't need the treatments that the medical doctors were recommending. So in that case, a month turned him around. Now, I told him, you still have to keep up the momentum, because just because you cleared that problem out doesn't mean if you go, it won't come back if you go back to your old behaviors. But for some people, it can be rather quick. I mean, the body naturally wants to heal, so all we have to do is give it the resources to help it cleanse most appropriately. Give it light foods that are easy to digest, easy to assimilate, easy to nourish our cells. And when the cells are happy, we are happy. So that, but for other people, it can take a little bit longer. And, you just go with the pace that you need to go. It's as long as you're on the path of healing, and this is the path of healing. This is the path that we are meant to embrace for health.
Yeah.
It will come. It's natural law.
Brilliant. And you also do iridology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you just explain what iridology is and how can people use it as a tool to know what's going on in the body?
Yes. So iridology is just a non-invasive way to look at a person's state of health. And your iris tells a story of what your life has been like, what you've been through. And it's not going to, the iris isn't going to change, within a month after you've been eating all fruit. It's still going to retain your health history, but it does tell a little bit about your health. So the best thing I like about the iris analysis is that I can kind of determine how congested my patient is, or I don't want to say patient because I'm not a licensed physician, but how congested my client is. Like if they have a lot of white or a lot of brownish discoloration of their iris, that usually means lymphatic congestion, that the tissue spaces are clogged up a little bit. And that's probably what is causing a lot of their symptoms. And so you do see that lighten up as time goes by. And people have shown, images. And I saw these actually when I first started working with Dr. Morris. He gave me a big pile of iris photos when I first started working there. And he told me to look through them and study how the iris is changing. It was just a good introduction to learning how amazing iridology was. But in addition to looking at congestion and looking at lymphatic stagnation in the iris, you can also see little spots, little lacunae that show genetic weaknesses in a person's body, which I like to share with them. It doesn't necessarily mean you're feeling something in this organ, but as you detoxify, this could be an area where you feel soreness, where you feel pain. And it's just giving them a heads up, this is a weak area. Let's strengthen it with not only diet, but maybe using some herbs. And so it's a helpful tool for sure.
Nice. I'm really fascinated by it. I bought a book by Dr. Bernard Jensen. So I'm really looking forward to receiving it, to start looking at it, and then I want to do the one with Dr. Morris. But yeah, it's fascinating, and of course, when I studied biomedicine in London, one of the things, this college offered iridology, but I remember this conversation in one of the classes because there were some people that were going to naturopathy. They were saying that iridology is not a science, that is not. But I'm like, we always say the eyes are the window to the soul. There are reasons why we have certain sayings. Just because somebody didn't take the time to really study that connection between this organ and the rest of the body doesn't mean it's not there. I mean, look at Chinese medicine. When you look at Chinese medicine, every single part of your body is connected. Every single every point, is connected to an organ. It's thousands of years old. Same with Ayurveda.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
yeah, it's like we're a hologram. We're the parts. The whole has all of the parts, right? So. I mean, every like the ear, the iris, every part of the body is a reflection of different parts. It's beautiful. And when you look at the human body from this perspective, it just brings on like this spiritual, I don't know, understanding, like how beautiful this whole all of this is, and how we're given the tools we need. It's like we create problems, and if we didn't create these problems, we would be fine because, and I usually say, governments create problems for us and then we have to focus on the problems. But really, I mean, if we know how to grow our own food, we know how to look at our own body to find where we might be ill, to give us clues as to what to do. I mean, the plants are all around us. I mean, plants as food, plants as medicine. We have everything we need, and we really don't. And so many people are afraid of what happens if society breaks down. Well, we're just going to get to our roots and we're going to become the humans we're meant to be, living in companionship with nature as opposed to, against nature.
Yeah, people really are afraid of nature. It's true. Oh, the herb can hurt me. Like, you're on like 10 medications. You're worried about a herb hurting you? Dude. Yeah, let's talk about priorities. Yeah, it's always funny for me. I mean, I understand why they're afraid. They don't know about it. And the doctors, of course, are like, don't, oh gosh, like plants can kill you. But, it's funny in a way. Like, you have to laugh about it. You're like, really, you're worried about a herb. But then um, yeah, let's talk about your affinity for healing, not just humans but also animals, though, because I find that really is cool. And again, just like allopathic medicine, allopathic veterinary schools are all about pumping medication. Actually, I never really thought about this until not long ago. But the same pharmaceutical companies that make medication for humans, they make them for animals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, hold on, I know this company's name. The vet wanted to give antibiotics to my dog. I was like, no. But it's interesting because again, it's the same MMO, but you do it in a very different way. Can you just take me through how you learned about animal care through your studies and how you apply it to your own pets?
Well, I mean, it didn't come to me intuitively at first either, but like back in 2010, my dog, I had a German Shepherd back then, and she was like my soulmate dog. Uh, she became ill, and it just was shocking to me because I was like, I love this dog so much, and I was following everything the vets recommended. So she was 14 years old. They found an abscess, or they didn't know what it was, but they found something that they thought was cancer in her liver, and they're like, we need to do surgery. So they opened her up, and I remember the phone call from the vet after the surgery. She's like, well, the surgery's over, your dog's still alive, but when I opened her up, her liver was mush. Would you like me just to put her to sleep now, or do you want to come and get her? And I'm like, I'm coming down to get her. So I got my dog, I brought her home, and I remember frantically getting onto Facebook. Again, this was 2010, and I'm like asking people, what should I do? Can anybody help? Somebody gave me the name to a homeopathic veterinarian in Florida. I called him up immediately, told him what was going on. He overnighted me a homeopathic remedy. And my dog, Lucky, in that short period of time, she was just kind of really, I mean, she just went through a major surgery and she was already sick. And I gave her the remedy, and like within hours, she started walking. She needed to go outside, and then she lived for another year and a half after that, which for a German Shepherd, that's a pretty long time, especially when they told me, take her home to die. I thought I would only have days with her. I had almost a year and a half with her. And that's when I started to realize, okay, I'm, happy that my own health is good. At that time, I was going through my fruit cleanse and really feeling good about my own body. But then I started to divert my attention to my dogs, and I started to change their diets. And I realized, okay, dogs and cats, they have different teeth than we do, so they probably have a different diet. I do give my dogs a mixture of food. I used to have two cats. My last cat passed away at the age of 22, which is a
Wow.
pretty long life for a cat. My other cat that I have with me, he's 17 years old, and then I have three dogs. So I have four animals, but I try to give them a diet, a rotational diet. For my dogs, I do rotational mono feeding, which is something Nora Lenz has come up with, and I think that's it's been quite helpful. Um, but I also use herbs with my animals. And so I think it's just like with humans, they have the same needs. They need pure food. They need a species appropriate diet. They need foods that they can assimilate that will give them energy. And like right now, I have a 17-year-old dog. He's a border collie mix. And about, I guess it was 2021, um, he was just having some issues. At the time, he was like 14 or 15, and I took him outside, and there was just blood coming out of his urine, and it freaked me out. And I put him on the fruit because I knew that the fruit was cleansing.
Mm-hmm.
And within like a week, he was back to normal. And then I haven't thrown a bunch. I don't give him the raw meat anymore like I do my younger two dogs and my cat. So he's mostly on plant foods right now. But that was 2021. Now it's 2023, and he's still doing okay. He's moving slower, and I need to help him. And he has the bladder capacity. He can only hold his urine for 3 or 4 hours, so I have to take him out more frequently. But he still has a good quality life. He enjoys his food. He enjoys being out in the sun. So, 17 and a half is a pretty old age for a dog. I do think, but a lot of my animals I rescued from rescue organizations. So unfortunately, they over vaccinate them when they're young puppies. They castrate them, and they do all of these things. Which, I do appreciate the rescue organizations because they save the animals from, a very terrible way of life. But at the same time, I wish they knew more natural ways to kind of bring these animals into the world instead of injecting them relentlessly. But there's a lot of great natural pet animal doctors. I prefer homeopathic vets because I think they have gentler remedies. But, herbal remedies are also great for animals, and appropriate diet is also quite important, like it is for humans.
Yeah.
So, animals, they have a spiritual life as well, and they have, feelings and emotions that all need to be nurtured, just like humans do. So, I don't really, advertise working with animals per se, but if, I have a client that has an animal related issue, I'm more than happy to kind of chime in and tell them, little things they can do to help their animal heal.
That's lovely, because a lot of people, it's hard, especially when we are in Europe. I don't know Europe, but Portugal definitely harder to find holistic vets. I mean, I know one, and I really appreciate what he does, and he helps a lot. But I like to have a broader community as well, and not necessarily have to be vets, but like people that have experiences with different dogs. I certainly, yeah, I certainly know how you feel. I mean, we rescued a lot of dogs here in the streets, and we had to castrate them because it's impossible. Otherwise, we can't. It's impossible to have more puppies, and people here don't look after their dogs. So they're in the street, they have puppies all the time. I mean, it's a problem. But
yeah,
I definitely don't vaccinate.
As far as neutering and spaying, it's not that I'm against that. I think they just do it way too young for these puppies.
Yeah,
they should wait until they're like 6 months to a year of age.
Yes. Yeah.
I've rescued two male dogs that were both neutered within like their first 10 weeks of life. No. And they didn't grow properly, and it created a lot of complications. So that's just the only comment I wanted to make upon that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, and I mean, I agree with you. I wish I could just say all the dogs should just be naturally, but I know it's hard. But you're right. There is an age where, just wait until 6 months and a year, and then, try and do it when they're a little bit more grown and more developed. But certainly vaccinations. I mean, our first dog in London, poor Scooby, we were you're forced in a way to do it, especially in London. And we had to bring him here to Portugal, and they would not let him travel without this stupid vaccine. So yeah. He's lovely. He's definitely a special boy. And it's like the autistic version of a dog, really. it's still like very much like a puppy that didn't really develop much, bless him.
Oh, did you say autistic?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one of those dogs.
You do.
Yeah, the dog you saw coming in, I think he is autistic, and I'm not saying that jokingly. I think these vaccinations do the same thing to dogs and cats as they do to humans. I mean, he's overly obsessed with his ball. He has this bright orange ball, and it's in his mouth all of the time. He doesn't leave its side, and
Same exact thing.
it's like that you see that in autism. So I'm actually I'm working with a practitioner to do some soul spiritual healing on myself. It's called Heilkunst homeopathy. And I want to learn it down the road because I find it a way to kind of address those emotional and spiritual issues. But this practitioner works with animals too, and I'm going to have him work with my dog. His name is Francis. Because this guy, his name is Rudy Versboer. He's a doctor of medical Heilkunst, but he has helped reverse children with autism. I'm hoping he can do the same with my dog. He's 5 years old now, but I would like him to not be so upset. I mean, he will tear through covers if he can't find his ball, and he gets frantic, and it's an anxious way of life for him.
Yeah, same, exact same. And he would, Scooby just barks and barks and barks, ball, ball, ball. I mean, it's not normal. It's not normal. And I was thinking of doing also some Reiki with him. I just started studying it. So I started doing it on Marley, my little one, my soul animal. And it's helped, like she had this growth and only with Reiki and I gave her some medicinal mushrooms, some reishi for immune system, and something for her liver just to help her. But and it's working. But it's funny. I had this experience with the Reiki. I put my hand over that part, meditating over healing, and I felt like this heaviness, like a ball, was stuck in the center of my hand, and I shushed it away. And then in the middle of the night, I woke up with this heaviness again, and I had to like let it go. And then it was fine, it was gone. And then within 2 weeks, that growth just went away. So I was
Wow.
like, okay, that happened. I wasn't just imagining it. I'm like, maybe I'm just so psychosomatically
I
imagining it.
don't I don't think you are. I did study Reiki myself, and I think it's a beautiful way of connecting with the people we're trying to help heal,
Mm.
and hands-on therapy. I remember my mom back. This was shortly after I learned Reiki, and my mom had broke her arm, and it was during my spring break from teaching, so I decided to go down there for that week and help my mom out because she couldn't use one of her arms. And every day I gave her Reiki sessions, and my mom said she could feel the heat coming from my hands, and she said it just felt so nice. And I'm like, do you feel like it's helping you heal? And she's like, I do. I feel like the healing is coming through your hands, and I'm like, wow. And because as a new Reiki practitioner, I didn't realize that I had that power, but I was just doing what I was taught. And I do think
Mm.
it's a beautiful way to connect and help even our animal friends heal.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Patty. This is so amazing. How can people, find you if they want to reach out to you? And of course, we'll have everything in the show notes. But if there's a quick way to get in touch with you, what is the best one?
Well, my website is naturallawhealth.com. I'm building an online program that will launch probably this summer, and it will have a different website because I'm building this separate website alongside my main website, and that's called naturallawhealth.life.
Mm.
And so that's going to be like a group program to help people that want to detoxify have more weekly accountability, because I think that was missing when I'm working one-on-one with people. And because my schedule fills up so quickly, I mean, my weekends usually are dedicated to working with my clients, and I'm working full time during the week.
Mm.
So it's hard for me to help everybody that needs help. But if I do group work, I feel like I can answer people's questions, and then I can still connect with people in that way. So that's what I'm working on. And I was doing a weekly live stream. I took a hiatus until the end of the semester. I just found that helping my 17-year-old dog was taking up a lot of my time as well. So I took a break from that. But in the summer, since I'm taking off from teaching, I'll jump back into my live stream. And for that live stream, I do take calls from the public. So if people want to join and ask questions, that should be back up and running by mid-May.
And it's also on your website or social media?
It's actually, I announce it through my Facebook group, Natural Law Health Facebook group, my business group, if you will. But I announce it there. It's through this platform called the One Great Work Network, which is where a lot of people that are trying to make this world a better place and, share their great work and inspire others. It's kind of a group of people that come together to do that, and I'm one of the content creators on that group. So that's what I do the live stream through.
Amazing.
But I use Zoom, and I provide a Zoom link, so if somebody wants to join and ask questions, they can do that.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I mean, thank you so much for your work, for your passion for it, and also for educating everyone about, the body and also healing. We need definitely light workers in this world, and you were definitely one of them. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. And I love the podcast you've been doing. I've been watching them, and it's just great to see that you are too putting out that message and helping others. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Patty, and thank you everyone for staying on for this episode. I hope you loved it and that you are maybe more passionate about AMP as I am. Now, I really am glad we touched on detox because I never want my listeners or anyone to be scanned by marketing words and not understanding what they mean. So I want you to be healthy and have the power to understand your body. On that note, if you want to work with Patty, all the show notes have her links as well as Dr. Morse's school link so that you can study with him if you want to become a practitioner or you just learn a little more to help yourself and your family. Remember that health is in our hands. We are really responsible for our body, so understanding what's happening in our body is the key. All right, if you love this episode, I would love for you to please share, like, give us feedback, help us grow, and I'll see you next week. Bye.